Welcome to Manu Forti Ministries presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, Reggie Key, and today I have with me my new friend, Isis Spann. Isis, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
I'm all right. Amazing, huh?
Yeah.
So you and I just met. We haven't even been friends for a week now, I don't think. But we had a very fast connection with a couple of other people down at the South Carolina Alliance of Black School Educators.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly saw something in you that let me know that I wanted to have you on my show. And we'll get a chance to talk about that and flesh it out a little later.
Okay.
But to start us off, Isis, I wanted to ask you a very quick question.
Okay.
Do you consider yourself to be a genius?
I do. I do consider myself to be a genius.
You do. And I've seen some of the things that you're doing that are, in fact, genius. Even as we're heading into the end of January and going into February, there's a series that I'm going to start doing called Invisible Genius that recognizes the contributions of Black ingenuity all around us,
Mm-hmm.
whereby we recognize the contributions, but we have no idea that the people that contributed it are people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a lot about giving people their flowers in the midst of what they're doing, as opposed to retroactively being like, oh yeah, I should do a good thing. Like, you should know what you're doing while you're in the middle of doing it. And that what you're doing is genius. So I'm glad that you recognize it already.
Yeah, yeah.
So my follow-up question for you is this. When you think of this word genius, who comes to mind? What face, what name pops up?
Ooh, so many. But I'm going to go with the uncommon. And I'm going to say that Kendrick Lamar, to me, is a genius.
That is an uncommon response. I've never got that before. So I appreciate that. Now, this is very informative for me and for the viewers, because what I've noticed as I've been doing these one-on-one interviews is that the people who are identifying genius, it has a large part in whether or not they see it in themselves. So do you know who the number one answer is? I appreciate your uncommon response, but do you know who the common response is?
I'm pretty sure people probably say Albert Einstein.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 90% of my people, whether it's workshops or one-on-one, say Albert Einstein. And I'm not here to discredit Einstein or take anything away from him.
At all.
However, he was one type. And that's what we miss, right? He had a genius mind for physics. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit about his backstory, because if he would have listened to the people who were interacting with his genius at a young age, we wouldn't have ever known his name.
Exactly.
Because people didn't understand what he was doing and how he was thinking. It was like, yeah, you don't belong here. Right? So the thing that I want to bring to the forefront right now is that the people who identified Einstein as genius were the ones who were more than likely not going to identify it in themselves. And what I began to see in these one-on-ones is the people who would identify like, hey, my mom is a genius, my dad is a genius, my child is a genius. And the creatives too. I got to throw in the creatives, which Kendrick Lamar clearly is a creative. They were the ones who were more likely to say like, yeah, I am a genius.
Right.
And so it's a lot about association. We're never taught that Einstein is a genius. It's something that's kind of just in the atmosphere. It's in the ether, where we just kind of, it's just a known fact without being taught to us. But it's doing a thing where it disassociates, because I don't know about you, Isis, but I don't look nothing like Einstein. I don't know how you feel, but
no,
I don't look nothing like him. You don't look like him. And a lot of the youth that I know you work with don't look like him. So if they begin to attribute genius to him, like they'll put that he should be on a pedestal, but that genius shouldn't be on a pedestal too, because when we put it on that pedestal, we put it just out of reach of our ability to put it on ourselves.
Right.
And as you know, it's very important how we label what labels we accept for ourselves, because they dictate what we can and cannot do.
Right.
And far too often, to be quite frank with you, we receive labels early on that are limiters. And if we don't know who we are, we'll accept them and play to them instead of rising to the occasion. Because, you know, outside of knowing your name, this is what I teach to you. Outside of knowing your name, you should know you're a genius. Don't accept anything less than that. Now, it's not about being arrogant, but there's a balance, right? Because humility is not just making sure that you don't think too highly of yourself. It's about not thinking too lowly of yourself either. I'm gonna pause right there, because I feel like I've been talking a lot. Let me hear from you for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I love what you just said. Not thinking too highly of yourself, but also not thinking too lowly of yourself. But also there is in humility seeing the humanness of other people.
Yeah.
And not so much of this is what I am, this is what I do well, because a genius also has to understand that I have blind spots, and where I do what I don't see and what I don't understand, another person has to bring their genius in and put my genius with it so
Oh,
that we
snap.
can, continue to make things move and shape and grow. And I think a lot of what we're taught, and I come from an education background. I know I didn't, do my whole spiel, but in that we don't teach kids that genius is dribbling a ball. Genius
Hmm.
is in the way you throw the ball. Genius is in the way you write. You can be a genius in your penmanship. You can be a genius in the way that you speak. We make it this monolith. We make it this one
Yeah,
thing that a
that's good.
genius knows how to do things quickly. But no, a genius can be someone that knows how to take their time and break things down. But we don't express it that way. We express
Right.
it as a genius looks like this, sounds like this, and
Hmm.
does this. So as a kid, if I don't look like this and sound like this and do this, then I must not be a genius.
There you go. I'm about to just turn over. You know what? You run the rest of the interview. You dropping gems over here. I appreciate that. Like what I heard you say, I've never heard said before in these interviews. You're like, genius is not a monolith. And that's very much what we're going to be talking about today. Like
Mhm,
it does not look like one particular thing, because when we begin to do that, it excludes other people.
mhm,
And to your point, one of my first guests, he said that, hey, I got zeros and nines. And he's like, the places that I'm good, I rate myself a nine. I
mhm,
won't give myself a 10 because I don't want to be complacent and arrogant. But then there are some zeros that I have. And it's
mhm.
okay to have those zeros, because partnership comes in when we say, hey, look, my nine is your zero is my nine. Together, we
Yes,
can do something that apart we could not do.
exactly.
And genius
Mhm,
is complementary, right? But you have
mhm.
to be able to, you can't be complementary to someone else's genius if they don't know that they have it. And if you don't know that you
Mhm,
have it,
mhm.
right?
Or that you
And,
need it.
and that you need it. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to get into the part that you responded to was the not thinking too lowly of yourself, because
Mhm,
this is when it gets into the faith aspect. You and I can talk about faith because
mhm.
that's where we connected. That's where
Yeah.
we and four other people connected at the mixer, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Not thinking too lowly of yourself is a reflection of the fact that you have to know and believe that you are made in the image and likeness of God.
mhm, mhm.
And so you if you can't remember that, then you don't realize that he put everyone on this planet with his image and likeness,
Mhm,
with the goal in mind to restore order,
mhm,
to bring heaven on earth as it is, to bring things on earth as they are in heaven, to bring
mhm,
again to bring the order to disorder. And
mhm,
so if we keep on looking to other people to be like, hey, you're a genius, so whatever is out of pocket with this earth, like you do it, you fix it,
mhm.
and we'll never realize that there's something right in front of it. There's some things that Einstein could not do. I mean, he's not alive now,
Yeah.
but his genius was in physics, but he wasn't exposed to the same things that you and I were exposed to.
Right.
He might not have had an eye for the things that you and I see.
Mhm,
And so, despite his genius in physics, he can do nothing in the realm where you operate. He
mhm.
can't do anything in the realm that I operate. And so, instead of constantly looking at somebody else, the Steve Jobs of the world and the Stephen Hawkings and people like that, we
Mhm,
got to look to ourselves and look to our neighbors and be able to self-affirm and then affirm others that, hey, you got something on the inside of you that has to be
mhm.
released in order for this thing to begin to turn the corner for this
Right,
thing that we see as traumatic. So
right.
getting into Einstein a little bit more, um, he was one of those kids that got that letter home that was like, hey, you might want to make sure Einstein work with his hands because he not
Mhm.
getting it. He
Right,
not picking up what
right.
we putting down. And it's
Mhm,
because he thought differently.
mhm,
And a lot of our youth think differently. But for whatever reason, I don't know his full support story, like why he chose to not listen to what the teachers were saying. But this
mhm,
followed him even into college,
mhm.
where after in post-secondary education, the professors would get frustrated with him because he'd be like looking out the window while they're like on the chalkboard, and they're like, "Hello, Einstein, are you paying
Right.
attention to what's being? You know what? Get out of my class." He got
Mhm,
kicked out a lot.
mhm,
And what I've learned is he coined the expression. I believe he coined this the thought experiment. He did a lot
mhm,
of thought experiments. And I believe he was a right brain thinker. People might think that he was left brain. That's what a math is. But he was a creative person that thought outside of the box. Do you know what he was daydreaming about when he would look out the window? He'd be like, you know what? What would it look like to ride a beam of light from the sun to the earth? And from that is where he got the theory of relativity.
Wow. Yeah.
And so if these teachers kept suppressing his way of thinking and he acquiesced to it, we would have been denied one of the greatest minds of figures that we've ever known.
You could say that again, and they need to stop doing it right now in 2023.
Oh, we're going to get into it. Oh, we're going to get all the way into it, what's been happening in this generation since then, because it's still going on in the school system. So Einstein purportedly has this quote that I want to share with you, and I want you to let me know if you've ever heard it before, and then what's your reaction to it. And it goes like this: if you judge a fish.
Oh God, you better. That's my quote right there.
Okay, you go ahead.
Ability to climb a tree.
What happens if you judge a fish?
Go through his whole life thinking it's dumb.
Okay, so speak to it.
That's my quote.
That's my jam right there.
And we hadn't even talked. See, that's how we know we here. But so there's so much to that. So he talks about judging a fish on its ability to climb. He talks about judging, I want to say, a monkey on its ability to swim. So really, if you're judging this thing based on a gift that it doesn't have or a genius that it doesn't have, you're doing it a disservice. If I'm a bird, I was created to fly and fly with the best of them. If I'm a fish, I was created to Michael Phelps this thing, get in that water, do what I do. That's my lane. But if you are spending all of your time trying to get me as a fish to be the best climber that I could be, you missing out on what I was created to do.
Yes.
And I know, and another part of that quote too is that I like to add into it is, if I'm a fish, I can feel that I'm supposed to swim.
You can feel it.
If I'm a bird, I can feel that I'm supposed to fly. So it's just like you don't know what it feels like to be me in my genius, but you're constantly trying to tell me to do something else. And that's the missing. That's the thing that we and when I say we as educators, we miss that because we think we have a class full of fish that need to swim, and it's like 4 or 5 birds in there that need to fly, and that's okay.
So just real quick, because you said you captured the moment. I'm really about to turn over the hosting privilege to you because you knocking it out. Can you tell our viewers what it is that you do?
Yes. So I am a 12-year educator. I started my education career, of course, in the classroom, always in elementary settings. But in 2019, when I had my son, there was just this mind shift that I went through as a mom of a Black son. I have 4 kids, but it was just something about having a son in that climate when everything was happening. And I noticed that there was this correlation between what was happening in the classroom and what was happening in the street. And I saw that the way that they thought about Black kids on the street was not so far removed from how they thought about Black kids in the classroom. And I knew that if I stayed in the classroom and just taught my 20 kids in that one room, in that one school, that I was doing a disservice to not only Black kids all around the world, but to kids all around the world in general.
Yes.
So now I spend majority of my time in they call it an edupreneurial role, where I'm still focused on education, but I'm doing it more as a full-time entrepreneur, really supporting and being a voice and an advocate for families that are going through, pre-K through 5th grade experience and a public school, private school, or homeschooling. Like my mission, my goal is to be a voice and an advocate and a cheerleader for children that are going through this elementary experience, and also being that resource for their families so that they can get questions answered that no one else may want to answer, that they have someone that will advocate, that will fight battles for them that no one else may, necessarily want to fight, and to really be that voice and let individuals know, going back to that quote, like, if we don't see that this child was really born to fly or to climb or to swim, we're going to miss an opportunity for them to see that genius that is within them. So what
Absolutely.
I'm doing and to put it all in a bow is just taking everything, my passion, my beliefs, my philosophy on education that I had into the classroom, taking it out of that school setting and making it more of a world and a global setting so that I can impact more lives.
So I'm talking about, so what's the name of your LLC?
Yes, so it is Fundamentals of Learning. And
Okay,
the FUN is capital on purpose.
Yep, it's the fun. So I think I already mentioned it when we started, but I wanted to make sure that the viewers heard you say your business. So that's great. Two things that I heard you say. You said a lot, but two things that I want to like focus in on. One is you said that there are others that don't want to address the different approaches and the different individuality of students. It goes a little deeper than that. They're not even equipped to do it.
Yeah.
You're equipped to do it. And so I just wanted to, because that's part of your genius. The other thing is like the advocacy is so important that children have their own advocates outside of their parents, and they have to be the teachers, but eventually they have to be able to self-advocate as well. And that comes through self-affirmation, which we're going to get into a little later. So yeah, this whole fish quote, let me put my little 2 cents on it. I'm gonna put like a half a cent on it because you dropped it. But the thing about this quote is it becomes a metaphor for people's genius. You've already made that connection. But here's the thing that I gotta focus on. What happens to that fish if it stays out of water for too long?
It dies.
It dies, right? And so I see dying genius all around me, and I feel like one of my purposes is to not only identify but to revitalize, resuscitate, and resurrect the dying genius that I see around me, right? And the other thing that I see when I envision this quote, I see the fish clinging onto the roof for dear life, and I see the tree trunk. But then there's something off camera that's important, and this is my vision of it. To the left of this tree and this fish, there's the ocean, and it's not far off. It's not far away. It's really close. But this fish has been conditioned to be like you said, though it innately knows that this doesn't feel right. This is not my lane. But there's this person off to the right. We're assuming this fish is sentient. It can understand in English and all that. There's a person or something or someone off to the right that keeps telling it, like, have you climbed that tree yet? You should be climbing this tree. Why aren't you climbing this tree? And for whatever reason, the fish is listening to that versus following its nature, following its knowing what its element is. And so it's very important for us to figure out what's my lane, what's my element. Because a lot of us end up beating our heads up against the wall, trying to get into a system, trying to get into a thing that we were never meant to get on the inside of in the first place, based off of what somebody else told us. Or based off of what I was chasing money when I went to college. So I majored in computer engineering, but I'm not doing that now because that's not where my genius is. But I was just like, well, I know engineers make good money. I know I like math. So I guess that makes sense. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. So I was literally starving myself, literally like a fish out of water, trying to figure this out. And I struggled. I struggled in college academically. Never had struggled before. Didn't last very long in engineering. 2 years, I got laid off. Wasn't fired. I was laid off. There's a difference. The company was
look, I wasn't doing a bad job. We just
right. The company was doing a bad job. But that's a whole nother story. And so what we need to first do is focus on how do we find the right element. And this is where it gets interesting. So this is when it comes into there's 3 components that God gave me and how to understand somebody's genius. And he gave it to me by passion, talent, and purpose. Okay, so we're going to walk through those 3 things. So now, what comes to mind when you hear this word passion, Isis?
Passion to me is a feeling. It's what makes me feel. It's what makes me feel good. It's what makes me feel happy. It's what excites me. That's what I think about when I think of passion.
Okay. Now, I'm going to add something to it that's you don't normally think about. The number one word in response that I hear correlated with passion is love.
Yeah.
People like, when we talk to kids, hey, you know what? When you find your career, do what you love. And I'm like, that's cool. But from the perspective of genius, save love for marriage. When you want to actually get into your passion, go to the opposite end of the spectrum of love and focus on what you hate. It's a little different, right?
Yeah.
Let me explain.
About that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're supposed to act like you ain't heard this before.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, tell me about this. That's interesting.
So we'll edit that out later on. No, we won't. So there's a book that I read called The Assignment by this dude named Mike Murdoch. He's a Christian. And what he said was, if you want to figure out why God put you on this planet, if you want to figure out your assignment, if you want to unlock your destiny, you have to actually get into what you hate. And here's what he said. He said, look, the world is broken because of sin. And it breaks God's heart. It grieves God's heart. And so his response to this sin that is in the world was to create someone in his image and likeness. We're getting back into this humility. And though we lost our vision of who we are through sin, and though we lost our authority, Jesus Christ restored it to us. In that restoration, though, we still kind of don't know what our lane is and our authority, but God gave us a way to figure it out because he grieves our heart individually with some of the things that grieve his heart. And how it manifests is we'll see it operating because it'll traumatize us when we're younger. Like something will happen to us. The brokenness of first of all, do you agree that the world is broken?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that brokenness affects different people in different ways because there's enough brokenness to go around. You know, when you shatter glass, it's like 1,000 pieces that you will find for weeks, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of brokenness to go around. That brokenness affects you differently than how it affects me. I'm going to ask you what you hate in a second. But when that thing triggers us, we'll be like, "Ooh, I don't like that. I don't like how that makes me feel." And as we begin to grow and try to heal from that brokenness, we begin to see it in other people. We begin to see it operating and hurting other people. We'll be like, "Oh, I hate that. I hate when that happens. Somebody should do something about that." And then we'll see it. Somebody should do. Matter of fact, we'll be so drawn to it that when we get around our friends, they're like, "Don't let Isa see that because if she gonna go off. If she see that happening, she's going to go off." And our friends be like, "Don't look that way." And be like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, snap." So the thing of it is, when we're drawn to that, we're like, somebody should do something about that. Guess who the somebody is? It's not somebody else, it's you. And sometimes we even get mad, like, "That don't bother you?" No. We be getting offended, getting all in our feelings, like, no, it's not. They got their own trauma that they're supposed to be focusing on. But that brokenness in our heart, that thing that drives us to be like, I got to do something about that. It's the gas in our tank. When we see it, we won't care. Like, I don't care how. Most of the time, ISIS, it's not anything small either. It's something systemic. It's something large. And we'll be like, you know what, man? Like, I don't care if I got to chip away at it or if I'm lopping it off in notches. I'm gonna go do something about that. I don't care. You don't got to pay me to do it. You don't have to motivate me to do it. I'm gonna wake up. Like, can we talk about this? Can we do something about this though?
Right.
And so that's where the passion comes from. I know you've heard the expression, man, I hate that with a passion.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's not as foreign as we kind of think. And a lot of people get a little like, I don't hate anything. Like, okay, you trying to be you all right, sure. What do you strongly dislike? Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, again, just to tag it back to God, God sees it, he's like, all right, you know, somebody will say, well, why does God allow bad things to happen in the world? Well, he takes what was Genesis 15:20 says that, you know, when Joseph got imprisoned, that imprisonment eventually led to the salvation of his family, though, because he was positioned in Egypt. He was positioned when they had that famine, he was in a position to help his family. And Genesis 15:20 says, well, God, what was meant for evil, God used for good. Because if he hadn't been traumatized by what he went through in the imprisonment and the abandoning of his brothers, he wouldn't have been able to be positioned to actually save them.
Yep.
And that's what genius is about. Genius is when you affirm that you're a genius, you're not saying it for your own sake. You're saying it for the sake of, I've been positioned to help some other people. Why, and to see beyond the hurt that you have and see how it's hurting other people.
Right.
Moses was incensed when he saw his people being oppressed. And he was like, I got to do something about it. And his passion got the better of him because he fooled around and killed somebody. But he was getting closer into his destiny to deliver God's people from Egypt because of that thing that he responded to, like, we got to do something about this. This ain't right. So that's how the fish finds its water. That's how you find your element, by looking at the thing that you hate. What do you think about that?
I love that. I love that. And I switched my mindset like a few years ago when I started teaching, you know, my fifth graders. I changed it from what do you want to be when you grow up to what problem do you want to solve when you grow up?
There it is. Yeah.
What's the problem? What's the problem that you want to solve? Okay, you hate to see this or that, or you don't like this or that. Okay, when you grow up, or even now, let's start. How can we plan to fix this? So I love that idea of it's what you hate that you're passionate about. But a lot of times, you know, going back to what you said, the thing that we hate, we sit around and fold our arms and be mad at it
And
instead
look for
of,
somebody else to do something.
you know, what can I do? I don't like this. I don't like that people in my family don't stay married. I don't like that men abandon their kids. I don't like this or that. Okay, what are you going to do about
What are
it?
you gonna
Even
do?
personally, if you hate to see divorce, what are you going to do to make sure you have a healthy marriage?
Yep. What are you going to do to break the generational curse in your family that everybody, I look at, you know, some of my family members and it breaks my heart because a lot of our women have never been married. And I'm like, that's a curse though. Like, how can we break that? And I began to talk to the different people like, well, can y'all see this? Can y'all see this thing that's on you? And what can we do about it? Right. That's the thing that grieves my heart.
Yeah.
When it comes to understanding this idea, even with your children, and you know, most of the time when I do workshops, I only have an hour with kids, and so I got to get right to the point. And I'm like, I don't say like, hey, what can you fix? I be like, what do you hate? Because you know, kids, they'll tell you that in a minute.
I'll tell you.
I got an example for you in a minute. So before I give the example, though, I want to just identify, Isis, what is it that you hate?
I hate when kids can't be kids.
Which is at the heart of what you're doing. Kids can't be kids in school when they're told constantly and implicitly that you don't belong. And you have to change what you are. Like a fish can't change. A fish has gills, scales, fins, and streamline for water. You can't change the fish.
Right.
But you constantly are telling the fish, you need to change something about yourself because you ain't climbed this tree yet. You can't let the fish can't be a fish. Go ahead.
Or because I'm a fish, I'm trying to make you a fish. Or because I'm a bird, as a teacher, I'm trying to make you a bird. Because I'm a giraffe. So it's almost like going back to what you said, when I can identify who I am and what I hate or where my genius is, it's my responsibility now at that time to help you discover that thing that you are instead of trying to make you me. And a lot of times in this, you know, in the field that I'm in, it's like, oh, I'm going to teach you math this way because that's how I learned it. I'm going to teach you how to read this way because that's how I learned it. But it's just like, no, how do they learn? How do they process? Now I'm going to have to do something that's hard, which is switch my mindset so that I can now be what it is and instruct in the way that you need me to versus in the way that I've been taught. So it's not that you don't know how to do it. You just don't use the same strategy as me.
There it is. We're going to get to that. Before we get to that, I want to highlight this. That person that I said I see off camera with the fish in the tree, that person has prejudged the fish based off of their world. And what we're talking about in genius does get into prejudice, because, and we all have prejudice.
Right.
We all, to make the world make sense, we prejudge people all the time because we're trying to figure out, am I safe here? Am I not safe? And so we'll look at somebody on the external and say, yeah, this is what I think of you. But our job, though, is not to be driven by our prejudice. Once we meet a person, then we have to put our prejudice aside and allow that person to define who they are to us. Right. And once we do that, then we're not allowing prejudice to become bigotry, to become, you know, some form of discrimination. Right. And so we know that that's what we struggle with. A lot of our youth struggle with is just, hey, we see you for who we want you to be. And what our experience is, what we've been exposed to, instead of looking at who you are for, let you tell me who you are. Right. So this is really important for this genius, because if you start with this, hey, my name is Reggie and I'm a genius. My name is Isis and I'm a genius. And somebody comes and puts a label on you that's less than that, you'd be like, nah, that's not me. Take that off.
Not me.
Right. So to move us along, I'm gonna get into the next component of genius as God has given it to me, in this talent. Right. Because talent, if we're reacting to what's broken in the world, let me ask you this. I don't know if you're the fixer in the house, but when you see something broken in your house and you kind of assess if you can fix it or not, and you're like, yeah, I think I can fix this. What's the first thing you look for?
It depends on what I'm fixing.
If it's an appliance, just a regular type of appliance, and you're like,
no, appliances, I'm not doing that at all.
Well, all right. So your husband then, like, what do you think your husband's going to look for once he's assessed, like, I can do this myself? What does he then look for to fix what's broken?
He probably gonna go on YouTube, honestly. I mean, no, he'll probably look for the manual first.
Okay, so once he's gone to the manual, Once he's gone to YouTube, whatever it is, the manual in the YouTube is going to tell him he needs to find something to fix what's broken. What is it that he's going to need to find?
Some kind of tool.
Some kind of tool. Yeah. And so if we're going to address the brokenness that's around us and stop, relying on the Einstein. I mean, Einstein is dead. Whatever we see is the problem. He can't do nothing about it.
Not right now.
Nah, right? So we got to look to ourselves and say, what tool do I have to fix this thing that's broken? And the tool that God has given us is talent. T for tool, T for talent. Everybody's talent is different. We say this expression a lot too, God-given talent. That's exactly what it is. But he gives us this thing to say, okay, that's what you're going to use to fix what's broken. And a lot of times, Isis, the thing that he gives us, we overlook it. Like it's common to us. We're like, oh, that's just this that I do. And we're like, it's like, all right, so I need to backtrack for a second. I'm gonna give you 2 Bible examples. So when we start talking about passion and focusing on what you hate, I always think about David and Goliath, right? Because remember I said the thing that you hate is systemic, it's large, it's bigger than you, right? But you won't care. Just like David. When David saw and heard what Goliath was saying, he was like, nobody going to shut this dude up. Like, you know what? I got him. Let me get at him.
With my slingshot.
With my slingshot, right? That's important. Now, that's not the only, people always focus on Goliath, but David went on a campaign where he was slaying multiple giants in the Bible. Matter of fact, that's why I believe he is told to be a man after God's own heart, because God saw that in the world. He was like, that's not supposed to be there. That's something that I did not design. I did not sanction that to be on the earth. Y'all need to eliminate that. And David was like, yes, sir. I will get after that. Right. So to your point, before he got his slingshot, King Saul responded to his, like, you want to go do this? Hey, take my armor. And David was like, no, don't give me that. I'm a boy. I'm a teenager. You're a grown man. If you send me out there in your armor, I'm going to die. That wasn't said, but I believe that's the process, because that armor was not designed for David.
Right.
You see where I'm going with this? That was King Saul's armor. And so David was sensible enough to say, that's not my talent. Don't give me that. Give me my slingshot though. I've killed bears and lions defending my dad's sheep. I know what to do with the slingshot. Give me that. Let me get them 5 smooth stones. I'm gonna show you something. And that's what we have to do with our talent. First, we got to recognize what it is and where it comes from. Right. And once we do that, now I'm gonna transition to the next story, because Moses did the same thing. Moses was focused on the wrong thing. He was like, God, what you want me to do? I don't speak too well.
I can't do that.
I stutter. I can't do that. And God, first of all, God was like, man, who made your mouth? Like, really though? He's like, okay, you're gonna meet your brother Aaron, and he gonna speak for you. Moses was still focusing on his shortcomings, which a lot of us do. Still focusing on, I can't do this, I can't do that. So God asked him a real simple question. Hey, bro, like, what's in your hand? Just this staff. He's like, oh, okay. Put the staff on the ground. Put the staff on the ground, turn into a snake. Now pick it up by its tail. Pick it up by its tail, turn back into a staff. It's like, you have all you need. You're already equipped to perform miracles, signs, and wonders with what's in your hand. Stop overlooking it. And so again, that's what we do with our talent. We recognize talent in other people all the time. We recognize genius in other people all the time, but we overlook ourselves in the process. So the other part of talent is generational, Isis. Like some people, I hate it. I'll go ahead and say it, because this is all about, I hate it when people are like, I don't have genius, because that lets me know they don't know who they are. And then when they say like, I don't have any talent, I'm like, you serious? You don't have no talent. Talent is generational. So for those who say they don't have it, I'm like, look to your parents, look to your grandparents. There's something we talked about generational curses earlier. There's also generational blessings that go from generation to generation. And because of the lack of opportunity and the lack of resources, a lot of the talents that are in our family don't manifest themselves, but they're manifesting themselves now in our children, because they have opportunity and resources that our forefathers didn't have. But they got to know what's on the inside of them. So I always tell kids, I say, I don't have any talent. What your mom do? What's your dad do? What's your grandfather do? It's there, and you're probably already operating in it. You're just like, oh, that's just my staff. That's just my slingshot. Right. And so once we can see the generational aspect of our talent and see that it's on the inside of us already, then the purpose becomes easy.
Right.
Your purpose in life is to identify your God-given talent, recognize that it's your tool to address the thing that you hate that's driving your passion. And when you begin to do that, you will unlock your genius and change the world around you. Now, it's easy to say, and then once I play it out, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But it's very much like putting a puzzle together. Like sometimes it's only 3 pieces, but it's like having a 500-piece puzzle. Like, all right, I thought this went here, but sometimes you got to move it around and you got to fail a couple times to get it right. And a lot of people fail forward. A lot of people don't like to fail. So they're like, that didn't work. So like, I don't have nothing.
Right.
It's like, no, you got to shift this around to make it make sense. And so I feel like I can kind of tell when I've been talking too long. Let me switch it back over to you. Yeah. Isis, what's your talent?
My talent is seeing and connecting with people.
Saw that happening firsthand last weekend. Yes.
That's my talent. And I used to say my talent is teaching, which I feel like that's more of a lane that I'm in, but I feel like I box myself in when I say I'm a teacher. Mm-hmm. Because people will automatically think, oh, what school you work at? Or what building are you in? And I'm just like, ugh, I don't want that to be like like Pastor T.D. Jakes talks about, or Bishop T.D. Jakes talks about, oh, they just wanted me to be a pastor. So when I started talking about writing books and making movies and having a warehouse, people was like, no. That's not what you're supposed to do. So it's just like looking at your talent as something that can be transferred from this place to this place to this place. So connecting with people can be in a classroom, it could be in a boardroom, it could be on Zoom, it could be anywhere. But I know that that's my talent because I'm able to see the small things in someone and help them to realize that it is a slingshot or it is a staff. You may see it as, oh, I just know how to cook. Oh, I just know how to braid hair. Oh, I just know how to do this. But I'm just like, no, that's a talent. I can't braid. Everybody can't do that. And in our society, we pick and choose who's talented. And that's not fair.
Nope.
We pick and choose who gets to be the model or the face of that thing. And, kind of like what we talked about before, when they're so out of reach or when you're looking at it from your cell phone or your computer, you feel like, oh, that's in California, or that person is in Washington, D.C., or that's happening in Africa. It's just like, no, like you have the ability to be that thing too. And another thing that, I help, kids to understand too, is you may not be called to be that thing around the world. You might just be called to be that thing in your house.
Yep.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
You too busy trying to be LeBron James, all traveling and from Cleveland and Miami and all these. No, you just supposed to be a coach in your neighborhood. Yes, you talented in basketball, but you might not have been called to be in the NBA. You might have just been called to groom the next person that's going to the NBA.
That's humility.
You have to be okay with that.
Yep.
You have to be okay with that.
Your impact is going to go around the globe. You might not. You might have to stay where you are.
To see it. Dr. Maya Angelou talks about somebody asked her, like, what is your impact or what is your legacy? And she said, I might not even live to see my legacy.
Are we comfortable with that though? A lot of us aren't.
And I had to get comfortable with that because you do want those accolades. You do want those, those plaques and those certificates while you're here, but you have to be comfortable saying and understanding that I just might be planting a seed.
Yep.
And I might not even get to see the fruit of what that's going to be, but I know within myself that this is what I'm supposed to do. I might not get an award for it. I might not get recognition for it, but I know that this is what I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to be, who I'm supposed to be impacting with this talent. And that has to be enough. And a lot of times we get caught up on the likes. And did I go viral? And how many people commented? And how many people saw it? And it's just like, if one person saw it and changed their life or didn't kill themselves or didn't, feel like they were failing their kid, that has to be enough for us if we're really in the business of serving people. Because it's not going to always be a 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread situation. Sometimes it's going to be you and 12 disciples, and that's it. And you got to. That's
important. That's important. It takes the attention off of you and puts it on other people. I feel like, it's like the butterfly effect, right? You know, a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and you know, all the way around across the world, it creates this tsunami or tidal wave or whatever. And the butterfly might not ever see it, but without the butterfly, it wouldn't happen. And I feel like that's the core of what's that genius. That's the kingdom is what it is, because even the Bible says, like, you know, Paul was wise enough to say, hey, I planted, Apollos watered, God provides the increase. And a lot of times we want to see the increase.
You want to be the increase,
you
or
want
you
to be the
want it
increase.
to be because you did something, or you said something, or you were there. And it's just like, boo, it's not always
about you. It's the instant gratification thing that grips a lot of us. Like, all right, I saw that, now I'm just watch it. Like, no, plant and keep moving, water and keep moving, and trust the process, because God's going to get an increase. So I want to come back to the youth. I told you about these 10 little boys, right? But let me tell you what happened when I asked them what they hated. They all said school. I said, yeah, that's what I figured. And they thought they wrecked my workshop. They was looking kind of smug, like, yeah, what you gonna do with that? And so I'm glad you asked. I was like, look, if you remember what I said about what you hate, and that, you know, the thing that you hate is the thing that's broken that you're meant to fix, then you just told me, all 10 of you, that you're future educators. And they was like, oh snap, like what are you saying? And I'm like, think of it from this perspective. And now we're getting into some Einstein type stuff. I'm like, look, there's 8 different learning styles in school. No, there's 8 different learning styles. School only teach from 3. And what your learning style likely is not being spoken. Like, your learning style is not a visual learning style. It's not a verbal learning style. It's not a left logical math thinking learning style. It's probably a right brain learning style. You're creative, but you're getting marginalized. You're made to feel like a fish out of water, because your learning style is not being represented by the school system, which is failing you. Your learning style is kinesthetic, which means, hey, I got to move to process information. But every time you go to move, you're told, hey, sit down, be still, stop that. Suppressing your learning style. You're an exploratory learner, which means you got to put your hands on stuff. But every time you set your hands on something, hey, keep your hands to yourself. And now you're like, man, I don't belong here. But I told them, like, look, that's only half the story. That learning style that you have, if instead of running away from the school system, proclaiming that you hate it, if you then ran towards it and let your learning style become your teaching style, now you're going to reach other students who have the same learning style as you. And I believe if all 8 styles are represented in the school system and the teachers, then the school system will have to change, because the class systems will have to change. The class systems will have to be like, okay, let's put all of our kinesthetic learners with a kinesthetic teacher. Let's put all of our exploratory learners with a exploratory, and so on and so forth, because there'll be that synergy that they'll have that a lot of them don't have right now. And that's what you're offering. You're offering it outside of the school system as a solution to it, though. Which I'm thankful for, right? Because some people, I think you might be a polyglot. You might be a person who can speak multiple languages. And most of the time when people talk about multiple languages, they're talking about multiple, hey, I speak Chinese, Spanish, Portuguese, whatever. But I think you have the capacity, you are equipped to speak multiple learning styles to engage your people. And this is a way of how you connect your talent, which, by the way, I got to say this to you too. You can have more than one talent. I have more than one. And so I think you have more than one as well. But I'm gonna focus on what you said, what you affirmed, and that you're a connector of people. So I believe that's true. I've seen it in 2 ways. I'm gonna talk about the first one. Your ability to connect students back to the school system. You do belong here. You belong here from this angle, though, not this angle. So you're finding ways to put these kids in their element so that they feel like, I'm functional. I'm not dysfunctional. I'm quite functional. But this is my water. That's how you connect. The other way is more spiritual. So this is what I saw. We the 6 of us. I'm gonna tell you. I in my phone, once we got everybody's numbers, I'm calling us the Scabsy Super Friends. Like, that's my group title. And I was like, this kind of, you know, I like it, but I was like, they probably think that's corny, so I ain't sharing with nobody. So, but listen to this though, Isis. The Super Friends formed once you became, hear me when I say this, once you became the central focus, like once we started talking to you, the Spirit of the Lord spoke to me to speak to you. And then it drew Taylor. Taylor was like, well, yeah, I'm starting businesses too, and I see this in you too. And it was through the Lord focused, because I didn't get a prophetic word for anybody but you. And when that prophetic word got released, that's when I saw us getting drawn together, though, because Taylor responded to it, Trey responded to it, Sean responded to it, right? And then that's it. The impetus of this quick agreement that we came into, it started with you. Because I was talking to Taylor at first before I was talking to you, and then you like kind of came from behind Taylor. I was like, "Whoa, all right, who are you? Who are you? All right, let me start talking to you." And then as the conversation kept going, and as you started to talk, that's what I said. That the Lord was like, I don't think you noticed this, but I started getting closer, and I started positioning myself to be directly in front of you, because I'm like, the Lord is saying something to this young lady. Let me just make sure I hear what it is. And so that speaks to the connectivity that you say you make. You drew us together.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like you did it like, hey, everybody focused on me. You was just being you, just talking.
Yeah.
And the things that you were talking about drew this connectivity that hopefully will continue to play out as we see the days and weeks and months to come.
And it will.
So I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. It will.
So that's pretty much it. That's my spiel on Genius. I'm happy to know that, most of the time I got to ask people at the end of the interview, hey, I'm gonna end the interview how I started it. Do you see yourself as a genius? And they get a chance to repent and be like, yeah, I see it. But you already saw it in the beginning. But I hope that more was revealed to you. The intentionality of where God has placed you, who he's exposed you to, who you're able to expose to other people, and what he's put on the inside of you is not by happenstance. I'm gonna share this with you, and then I'm gonna close this out. You mentioned LeBron James, and so I talk a lot about LeBron James when it comes to this genius. But I still, if you notice by now, I still come at a different angle. I don't come from where everybody else says. So I don't see LeBron's genius as his basketball acumen. I see that as his talent.
Okay.
I don't know what his passion is, but I can infer what it is, because he did a thing a few years ago that I'm sure you love. I'm sure you know it. What did he do in his city of Akron, Ohio, that was unprecedented?
He opened a school.
Was it private or public?
I want to say it's a public charter, I believe.
It's a public charter. Listen to this. This is how I see his genius coming together. I don't even like LeBron James like that. That's just me. I don't even like him. Right? There's something I'm a focus. I'm not gonna get into that.
Yeah, don't trash that man.
No, I'm not gonna trash him. I'm gonna build him up. His upbringing in the public schools in Akron, Ohio traumatized him, I believe, because he had to get into a private school just so that he could explore this expeditionary learning that allowed him to excel in basketball. So I'm gonna pause right there. A lot of our athletes who, they are many times told, like, you don't perform well in school, we'll let you get by though, because you're going to bring some notoriety to our school and bring some wealth to our school through your talent.
Right.
But I believe they're kinesthetic learners because they showcase it when they're on a field or on a court. They're able to process information in real time while they're moving, and they excel. And we got to stop calling it one thing and forgetting to see the other side of it. They're kinesthetic learners. That's my belief.
Yeah.
So in his kinesthetic learning style, the school system that he was in was trash. Like, they didn't have the most current books. They didn't have the best computers. They were lacking a lot of things. And I believe that traumatized him. So that when he finally got his platform developed, he finally got some money behind him, he wasn't happy just saying, I'm gonna get my mama a car and get my mama a house and get me a couple cars and get me a couple rings. He was like, I'm gonna go back to the city that I grew up in and give them what I didn't have. It's not around, I'm gonna build it.
Right.
But I believe his passion is poverty. His passion is being denied opportunities because of a lack of resources. And because it traumatized him, he sees it still operating in his city. He's like, I'm gonna do something about that. I can do something about it. That's his genius. I hope he opens more schools, right? In the surrounding areas outside of Akron, because he's doing a thing that it needs to be done.
Right. Yeah.
And so I see the groundwork for what you're doing being to that level. Like, everything starts small. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I'm like, vision, God gives us big vision, but the initial platform is small. Because he wants to see, like, are you going to make it about you and be like, oh, that's not big enough, I'm gonna stop? Or are you going to know that he says, hey, well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I'm gonna make you ruler over many.
Yeah.
And so I see that on you. You're a visionary person. You just got to stick to the vision and know what your lane is, so that you know what to keep and what to build up and then pass on. You know what I'm talking about. That's evoking what the Lord told me to tell you over the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that's my spiel. That's my story, Isis, and I'm sticking to it.
I like that story.
I do appreciate you taking the time to come on and continue the conversation about genius.
Yeah.
And it's my uncommon cue, Isis, to see the genius in you.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And so this is it. This has been Manu Forti Ministries presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am Reggie Key, and this has been my genius guest, Isis Spann.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at Inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.